Dr. Kaushal Kant Mishra has more than 18 years of rich work experience in orthopedics, joint replacement and trauma. He is recognized as first orthopedic surgeon to perform uncemented hip replacement in Tanzania. He has performed hip replacement on youngest female in Nigeria. He has done the highest number of hip surgeries in old age population between 70 to 107 years. He has performed fastest hip replacements in just 18 minutes, which is under process for indexing in record books. He has performed hip replacement, that is hemiarthroplasty, with just 2-inch skin incision, world's smallest incision, on 92 years male patient. In an establishment of bone and tissue bank at AIIMS Delhi, Dr. Mishra's contribution is of great importance. He has been nominated in Guinness Book of World Record for operating hip replacement on 107 years old patient in 2006. So over to Dr. Mishra.
ये जो लीफलेट सर के पास था, ये पुराना फोर्टिस का लीफलेट है, तो नए में एक अपग्रेड हो गया है। जो 18 मिनट्स का रिकॉर्ड था वो 14 मिनट्स 45 सेकेंड्स का हो गया है। दिस इज द फास्टेस्ट hip ball replacement all over the globe, anywhere. So it's not about hip, it's about osteoporosis. मैं कोई स्लाइड बना के नहीं आया हूँ और मेरे को बहुत अच्छी हिंदी भी इंग्लिश भी नहीं आती है, करेक्ट? तो मैं इंग्लिश में बात करूंगा, जहाँ मेडिकल टर्म होगा वहाँ इंग्लिश, नहीं तो इंग्लिश।
बहुत अच्छा लगा सर, बहुत अच्छा लगा।
अरे एकेडमिक वर्कशॉप थोड़ी ना है। तो ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस सर, आप सभी लोगों को पता है, आप हम लोगों से ज़्यादा ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस को डील करते हो। हमारे पास तो लिमिटेड सेक्शन आता है, आप लोगों के पास शायद ज़्यादा लोग आते होंगे। तो ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस इज नॉट अ local phenomena, it's systemic disease. If normally we send for bone density, BMD, for wrist, hip and spine, and if any one side is osteoporosis, usually people designate that patient is osteoporotic, which is not correct. In most of the patient, wrist osteoporosis is always there. So wrist is no criteria. So in 90% of my prescription, I never write wrist for the site for bone density checkup. I write only spine and hip. And wrist should not be the criteria to identify osteoporosis. At least two sides, and that should be either hip or spine. If both are osteoporotic, then only we should designate patient as the patient is osteoporotic, otherwise patient is not osteoporotic. Usually जो osteoporosis होती है वो disuse की वजह से old age में ज़्यादा होती है, और disuse अगर patient osteoporosis पर से disease नहीं है, मान लीजिए उसको प्लास्टर लग गया, किसी भी वजह से movement कम हो गया, तो उसमें osteoporosis होगी। But that is not treatable osteoporosis. That is local or focal osteoporosis. और मैंने कोई स्लाइड नहीं बनाई है,
बहुत बढ़िया सर, बहुत बढ़िया।
क्योंकि वो बड़ा बोरिंग सा होता है, वो वहाँ पढ़ते जाओ और आप लोग देखते जाओ मेरी शक्ल, और कुछ लोग that is not good.
सब दिल से बोलो, दिल से।
हाँ, तो मैं आप लोगों को एक मैसेज देना चाहता हूँ ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस पे। The favorite medicine all over India and all over the world, most of the places, for osteoporosis is zoledronic acid. आजकल या उसके पहले फोसावेंस हुआ करती थी, ऑस्टियोफॉस होती थी, उसके बाद एबेंड्रोनेट आ गई थी। फोसावेंस वीकली थी, एबेंड्रोनेट मंथली थी, जोलेंड्रोनिक एसिड ईयरली हो गई। It is very convenient for a doctor very convenient for patient, but worse for bones. It is worse for bones. पता नहीं, तो मैं सिर्फ ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि अगर ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस का आप लोग ट्रीटमेंट करें या कोई भी ट्रीटमेंट करें तो जोलेंड्रोनिक एसिड, फोसावेंस या ऑस्टियो बिसफॉस्फोनेट group should be the last choice. It is only meant for those patients who are not responding to any other treatment. The first treatment should be vitamin D, कैल्शियम. कैल्शियम में मैं प्रेफर करता हूँ विटामिन K2 के साथ या B12 के साथ. और अगर आपकी दोनों साइड पे ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस आ रही है, हिप पे भी आ रही है, स्पाइन पे भी आ रही है, और पेशेंट एक्चुअली वीक है, देखने से ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस की डायग्नोसिस के लिए बीएमडी की जरूरत मुझे नहीं लगता मुझे पड़ती है, और मुझे नहीं लगता कि आप सब में किसी को पड़नी चाहिए. पेशेंट की शक्ल बता देती है पेशेंट इज ऑस्टियोपोरोटिक और नॉट. अगर पेशेंट चल के वॉक करता हुआ स्मार्टली, जितने लोग यहाँ बैठे हैं, यहाँ बैठे सब लोग अपना डेक्सा कराएंगे तो 80% को ऑस्टियोपीनिया या ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस आएगी. रिस्ट में सबको आएगी, स्पाइन और हिप में आ भी सकती, नहीं आ सकती, लेकिन नन ऑफ ऑल इज हैविंग एनी ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस. ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस का पेशेंट एकदम उसकी शक्ल बता देती है. जैसे सीवियर डायबिटिक पेशेंट हो, आप देख के पहचान सकते हैं. सीआरएफ का पेशेंट हो, किडनी फेल्योर का पेशेंट, आप देख के बता सकते हैं. उसी तरह से ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस का पेशेंट भी आप देख के बता सकते हैं. अगर पेशेंट फ्रेजाइल सा है या कोई बहुत मोटी सी दादी आ रही है जो चल नहीं पा रही, डिफिकल्ट चल पा रही है, उसकी शक्ल बता देती है कि उसको ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस है. और बोन डेंसिटी एडवाइस कीजिए तो सिर्फ 2 जगह की करिए, स्पाइन एंड हिप की. और बोन डेंसिटी शुड नॉट बी अ क्राइटेरिया टू स्टार्ट योर बिसफॉस्फोनेट, टू स्टार्ट विद योर पीटीएच. ये 2 चीजें तभी स्टार्ट करें जब आप लोग पीटीएच टेस्ट करा लें. अगर आप पीटीएच टेस्ट कराते हैं, ब्लड टेस्ट, मैं यूजुअली 4 चीजें कराता हूं: कैल्शियम, फॉस्फेट, विटामिन डी एंड B12 एंड पीटीएच. ये 5 टेस्ट कराता हूं ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस के मैनेजमेंट के लिए. और अगर पीटीएच हाई है किसी पेशेंट का तो नेवर स्टार्ट नाइदर बिसफॉस्फोनेट नॉर पीटीएच, बोन मैक्स पीटीएच या एनी फॉर्म. सबसे पहले जब भी आपका पीटीएच हाई हो तो पेशेंट को केवल कैल्शियम, विटामिन डी दोनों फॉर्म में देना चाहिए. विटामिन डी विद B12, विटामिन डी विद विटामिन K2. मैं एक लिखता हूँ, मैं अपना प्रिस्क्रिप्शन बता देता हूँ. डिप्यूरा once every week for 20 weeks, Selcal XT once a day, and with bone K2 or Supragal K2 or CCF, any of them. बट पेशेंट को दोनों साइड पे ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस अगर है तो, और इस ट्रीटमेंट के साथ अगर पेशेंट का पीटीएच हाई है तो मैं पेशेंट को ये प्रिस्क्राइब करके भेज देता हूँ और बोलता हूँ आप करीब 6 वीक्स के बाद पीटीएच करा के आइए. जब पीटीएच की वैल्यू नॉर्मल आ जाती है तब आप अपनी चॉइस से कुछ भी शुरू करते हैं, लेकिन मेरी रिकमेंडेशन ये है, और जो आइडियल रिकमेंडेशन है, यू शुड स्टार्ट विद सबक्यूटेनियस पीटीएच like bone max PTH or Forteo or anything, whatever you like. Reason being कि नॉर्मली आपने देखा होगा बोन जब बीएमडी कराते हैं तो उसमें एक चार्ट बना होता है, उसमें लाल, हरा, पीला बना होता है, उसमें हम लोग उसको यूं पलट देते हैं और आगे देखते हैं वो लिखा क्या. हम उस स्पॉट को, अगर आपका बोन मैरो जहाँ पे आप बोन डेंसिटी करा रहे हैं वो आपका कॉन्फिडेंस का है और लैब रिलायबल है, तो उस स्पॉट को देखिए कि वो कहाँ पे इंडिकेट कर रहा है. कभी कभी क्या होता है, उस ग्राफ में कुछ होता है और जो आपकी रिपोर्ट होती है कुछ होता है. मैं यूजुअली ग्राफ से जाता हूँ. अगर ग्राफ में जो साइट है इसमें स्पॉट बना होता है, डार्क स्पॉट बना होता है, वो अगर रेड जोन में आता है देन ओनली इट इज ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस. व्हेन इट इज येलो जोन इट इज ऑस्टियोपीनिया. व्हेन इट इज ग्रीन जोन इट इज नॉर्मल बोन. जब तक वो दोनों स्पॉट रेड जोन में नहीं है, पेशेंट इज नॉट हैविंग ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस एट ऑल. अगर लिखा भी है तो गलत लिखा है, आइदर प्रिंटिंग इज रॉन्ग और ग्राफ इज रॉन्ग. और पेशेंट की शक्ल बता देती है कि उसको ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस है या नहीं. क्लिनिकल डायग्नोसिस के लिए मैं 3 चीजें करता हूँ. एक, शिन पे अंगूठा रख के प्रेस कीजिए, पेशेंट को पेन है, दिस इज 1. स्टर्नम पे प्रेस कीजिए, पेशेंट को पेन है, यस. क्लेविकल पे टैप कीजिए, अगर क्लेविकल टैप पे उसको पेन है तो उसको ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस है, कुछ चेक करने की जरूरत है.
मलेशिया में तो होगा
सर. हम ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस जब हम बात करते हैं तो हम ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस में ये मान के चलते हैं कि पेशेंट जो मेरे पास आया है उसकी एज 50 के ऊपर है, तभी मैं ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस, क्योंकि मेरा लेक्चर ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस पे है.
वेरी गुड ऑब्जर्वेशन सर.
इसलिए मैंने ये बात बोली. अदरवाइज यस, ऑस्टियो मलेशिया में हो सकता है, बट उसके लिए लेडी की एज 20, 30, 40 तक होगी.
माइक पे आ जाइए.
बनिए
ये बिल्कुल.
बेटा थोड़ी आवाज बढ़ा दे.
आवाज कम आ रही है? अब ठीक है. तो क्लिनिकल डायग्नोसिस, पहले तो पेशेंट आ रहा है, उसकी शक्ल बता रही है, उसका गेट बता रहा है, उसका पैटर्न बता रहा है कि ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस है या नहीं है, डाउट क्रिएट कर रहा है. क्लिनिकल एग्जामिनेशन, टैप ऑन द शिन ऑफ टिबिया, टैप ऑन स्टर्नम एंड टैप ऑफ क्लेविकल. दिस इज द 3 क्लिनिकल साइंस जिससे आप क्लिनिकली बता सकते हैं कि पेशेंट को ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस है या नहीं. अगर आप बिजी हैं, मैं भी सब में नहीं करता, पर मालूम होना चाहिए. आप उसके बाद बोन डेंसिटी एडवाइस कीजिए, और अगर बोन डेंसिटी रेड जोन में आ रही है देन उसका पीटीएच एडवाइस कीजिए. अगर पीटीएच हाई है तो आपको सिर्फ विटामिन डी, कैल्शियम एंड कैल्शियम, 2 कैल्शियम. पेशेंट की एज अगर 50 साल के ऊपर है और अगर उसको ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस है, पोस्ट मेनोपॉजल फीमेल है, अगर उसको ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस है तो उसको 2 कैल्शियम देना चाहिए. और एक बहुत बड़ा मिथ है बहुत सारे डॉक्टर्स में, बहुत सारे फिजिशियंस में, कि कैल्शियम खाने से स्टोन बन जाता है.
पेशेंट्स का होता है.
हाँ, पेशेंट नहीं सर, बहुत सारे डॉक्टर्स भी कहते हैं, लेकिन पेशेंट ही बताते हैं. खैर, और एक किडनी का एक बहुत बड़ा डॉक्टर हुआ करता था, क्लाउड बर्नार्ड. उसका ये कहना था कि if your kidney is functioning properly, no electrolyte imbalance can happen inside your body. Chronic, अब आप वोमिटिंग करके पहुंच गए, एक्सेप्शंस हो सकते हैं, इन जनरल मैं बता रहा हूँ. If your kidney is functioning properly, आप कितने भी सॉल्ट खा लो, कितना भी कैल्शियम खा लो, ये सब बाहर निकल जाएगा. तो कैल्शियम खाने से स्टोन नहीं होता. फर्स्ट, बहुत सारे मरीज जो कहते हैं किडनी में स्टोन है सर, मैं कैल्शियम नहीं खाऊंगी, उनको समझाना पड़ता है. तो खैर ये बात रही सेपरेट. तो अगर आपका पीटीएच बढ़ा हुआ है तो आपको सिर्फ विटामिन डी इज मेन ट्रीटमेंट टू ब्रिंग डाउन योर पीटीएच टू द नॉर्मल लेवल. विटामिन डी along with calcium, along with milk and milk product. यूजुअली मिल्क एंड मिल्क प्रोडक्ट इस समय नहीं मैं बोलता हूँ, क्योंकि हमें पता नहीं वो कौन सा मिल्क पी रहा है और कितना मिल्क पी रहा है, ये नहीं पता. अगर पीटीएच का लेवल जब नॉर्मल आ जाता है, उसकी नेक्स्ट रीडिंग में कराता हूँ 6 वीक्स पे. 6 वीक्स पे पीटीएच रिपीट कराने के बाद अगर पीटीएच नॉर्मल आ गया तो मेरी फर्स्ट ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ चॉइस है कि उसको सबक्यूटेनियस बोन मैक्स पीटीएच या फोर्टियोनियर दिल्ली का जो आता है, और उसका रिकमेंडेड टाइम इज एटलीस्ट 1 ईयर. 3 मंथ यूजलेस, 6 मंथ यूजलेस, 1 ईयर. और हर 3 महीने पे बहुत सारे लोग बोन डेंसिटी कराते हैं, विच इज नॉट करेक्ट. बोन डेंसिटी विल चेंज ओनली एटलीस्ट आफ्टर 1 ईयर. तो 1 ईयर फर्स्ट बोन डेंसिटी जिसमें ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस है, उसके 1 साल के बाद हम बोन डेंसिटी को रिपीट कराते हैं. बोन डेंसिटी बोन डेंसिटी यूजुअली 1 साल पे ही चेंज आती है, और बोन मैक्स मतलब अगर आप परक्यूटेनियस सबक्यूटेनियस पैराथायराइड दे रहे हैं तो दैट इज द ओनली नेचुरल वे ऑफ इंक्रीजिंग द स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ योर बोन्स, देयर इज नो अदर वे। बिसफॉस्फोनेट क्या करते हैं? बिसफॉस्फोनेट आपकी ऑस्टियोक्लास्टिक एक्टिविटी को रोक देते हैं, तो न बोन की स्ट्रेंथ अप हो सकती है न डाउन हो सकती है। आपने रेड जोन में बिसफॉस्फोनेट शुरू कर दिया तो उसी लेवल पे रोक देगी, तो पेशेंट की ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस तो ठीक नहीं हुई ना, उसका पेन खत्म हो गया क्योंकि बोन ब्रिटल हो गई, लेकिन उसकी ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस ठीक नहीं हुई, यानी कि बोन की स्ट्रेंथ नॉर्मल नहीं हुई है। अगर बोन की स्ट्रेंथ नॉर्मल नहीं हुई है, वो आप लोगों के लिए किसी के लिए नहीं समस्या, वो मेरे लिए समस्या। क्यों? क्योंकि अगर आपने उसको बिसफॉस्फोनेट दिया, उसकी ऑस्टियोक्लास्टिक एक्टिविटी खत्म हो गई, तो जब वो फ्रैक्चर करके आएगा तो वो फ्रैक्चर नहीं जुड़ेगा। 95% फ्रैक्चर नहीं जुड़ेगा। आप ये समझिए कि हमारी मेडिकल फ्रेटर्निटी ने बिसफॉस्फोनेट लिख लिख करके एक नए फ्रैक्चर का जन्म दे दिया है, जिसको हम बोलते हैं एटिपिकल फ्रैक्चर्स। The only cause for atypical fracture all over the world is bisphosphonate, and this atypical fracture happens without any trauma, without any injury. Just patient walk कर रहा था और वो उतरा और गिर गया, that's enough. जहां पे भी ट्विस्टिंग टॉर्क जब भी लगेगा, यूजुअली सीढ़ियां उतरते हुए या ट्विस्ट करते हुए हुआ, टूट गया। फ्रैक्चर एटिपिकल फ्रैक्चर गिरने की वजह से नहीं होता है, एटिपिकल फ्रैक्चर होता है तो पेशेंट गिरता है। दिस इज अ प्रॉब्लम विद बिसफॉस्फोनेट। यूएस एफडीए में 2014 में ग्लोबल वार्निंग इशू की हुई है, लेकिन सब चलता, मार्केट फोर्सेस है, उनका एमआर रोज खड़ा रहता है, सस्ता मद्दा टिकाऊ, करेक्ट। डॉक्टर के लिए अच्छा, सबको पता है क्यों। मरीज के लिए अच्छा, क्यों? उसको एक ही गोली खानी या साल भर में एक इंजेक्शन लेना, पर उसे ये नहीं पता कि ये गलत ट्रीटमेंट। ये हमारी ड्यूटी है, हम ये ना। जब एटिपिकल फ्रैक्चर होता है, मेरे पास ऐसे कम से कम 13 पेशेंट हैं जिसमें एटिपिकल फ्रैक्चर हुआ हिप का। पहले नेल हुई, फिर प्लेट हुई, फिर इधर का बोन ग्राफ्ट डाला गया, फिर इधर का बोन ग्राफ्ट डाला गया, फिर वो भी फेल हुआ, फिर हिप रिप्लेसमेंट हुआ। बात ये नहीं है हिप रिप्लेसमेंट हुआ और पेशेंट चला, बात ये है कि उसके 3 साल हम डॉक्टरों ने खराब कर दिए, 3 years। क्योंकि जब प्लेट होगी उसको ऑर्थोपेडिक का डॉक्टर, मैं अपनी फ्रेटर्निटी की बात बता रहा हूँ, ऑर्थोपेडिक का डॉक्टर देखेगा, अभी जुड़ रही है, अच्छा वेट मत दो, अच्छा रेस्ट करो। दिस इज नॉट लाइफ। क्योंकि एक्सरे में यूनियन दिखने के लिए हमें मिनिमम 6 months to 1 year चाहिए। 1 साल बाद हम डॉक्टर बैठते हैं और बताते हैं मरीज को कि जी हड्डी तो नहीं जुड़ रही।
सर, लास्ट 2 individual slides. Last 2 individual slides.
Please conclude.
अच्छा 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are 2 more speakers.
अच्छा ठीक है। मैं कुल मिला के जो मैसेज देना चाहता था वो ये देना चाहता था कि प्लीज डोंट यूज बिसफॉस्फोनेट एज अ फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ ट्रीटमेंट। द रोल ऑफ बिसफॉस्फोनेट ओनली अराइजेस व्हेन यू ट्रीटेड द ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस, means from red zone you bring it to either yellow zone or up to green zone, and after 1.5 year or 2 year you should give bisphosphonate and not bisphosphonate. The latest is denosumab. Denosumab is better than your bisphosphonate. So the
monoclonal antibody.
yes, denosumab should be given after 1.5 year of your parathyroid treatment, and then it should be repeated every 6 months. By that time patient will feel fine. But if you are giving bisphosphonate, my request, please do not use. I don't think इसके अलावा मुझे कुछ कहना था। इसके अलावा जो कुछ भी मुझे कहना है वो आपके लिए ठीक नहीं है, क्योंकि आप लोग मेडिकल फ्रेटर्निटीज हैं, अगर सर्जिकल का कोई हो तो मैं उस पर बात कर सकता हूँ। मुझे नहीं लगता कि यहाँ कोई ऑर्थोपेडिशियन सुन बैठ करके मेरी बात सुनेगा।
हाइब्रिड है बहुत सारे।
तो बेसिकली अगर हम सर्जिकल ट्रीटमेंट की बात करते हैं तो सर्जिकल ट्रीटमेंट में ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस में द करंट ट्रीटमेंट इज इफ देयर इज सैप फ्रैक्चर मींस डायफाइशियल फ्रैक्चर, द ट्रीटमेंट शुड बी nail, and if it's non-diaphyseal fracture, treatment should be plate, and plate should be locking. This is the only thing, because otherwise plate will come out. So surgically it is not very important. Osteoporosis is medical disease, physician's disease, orthopedician come after the complication. If you have treated osteoporosis properly, I don't think atypical fracture has been arrived. And in my opinion, please do not use bisphosphonate at first line of treatment. The first line of treatment is vitamin D, calcium, and if PTS is high, only vitamin D, and when the PTS becomes normal, then you should use this percutaneous parathyroid hormone, and 1.5 to 2 year treatment, then you start denosumab. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Dr.
Any
Mishra,
question?
sir. Thank you, Dr. Mishra, sir. Please take your chair, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have the question answer sessions in the end. Wonderful presentation without slides. Dr. K.K. Mishra showed his slides. Sir is also, apart from being an excellent orthopedic surgeon, a joint replacement surgeon, he is also very active politically on a national level and is the spokesperson, national spokesperson for BJP. Give a big hand for Dr. Mishra, sir. We come to the second topic for today evening by Dr. Ravinder Singh. His topic is osteopenic spine fractures and role of kyphoplasty, endoscopic spine surgery. Those of us who have elderly people at our home, our grandparents, our parents, I am sure you are not ignorant of the fact that many of us are facing these challenges in our day-to-day life with spine fractures. And to moderate the session, now we have Dr. S.K. Poddar sir. Despite all his problems, he would make it. Sir, please, we need to stick to some schedule, sir. Otherwise, we go haywire. Otherwise, the best thing is to have dinner and say goodbye. So, I would request Dr. Ravinder Singh to take the podium and request Dr. S.K. Poddar sir to introduce him.
So, topic has already been introduced by Dr. Chauhan, osteoporotic spine fractures and role of kyphoplasty and endoscopic surgery. And Dr. Ravinder Singh, speaker, is a graduate from MBBS. He has done MBBS from Kanpur Medical College, GSVM. Then he did his DNB in orthopedics, and after that spine fellowship from University in Canada, and then Nanavati Hospital. He is consultant spine surgeon in Fortis Escorts Hospital, and areas of interest are spine surgery, minimal invasive surgery, endoscopic surgery, and deformity correction. So, Dr. Ravinder Singh, please, you can start your talk.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm talking about osteoporotic spine fracture and the role of kyphoplasty in those fractures. So, Dr. Siddiqui will talk about osteoporosis pathophysiology later on, and as you know, osteoporosis is a very common problem in elderly people, especially elderly ladies, and more than 25% of people over 70 years and more than 50% of people over 80 years will at one time present with osteoporotic spine fractures. It's acute backache. Clinically, you can see spinal process tenderness, local kyphosis, sometimes radiculopathy, and very rarely you can see some spinal cord injuries. Investigation with all other routine investigation for osteoporosis, you need to take standard AP and lateral view of the spine, where you will see compression and wedging of the vertebrae. And very important is to take MRI, and MRI with STIR sequence. That will show you the increased intensity of in STIR sequence. That is a diagnostic of acute fracture in the vertebrae, because you can have in old people may have multiple fractures, so you have to diagnose which is the acute fracture and which needs to be treated surgically. So conventional treatment for the osteoporotic compression fracture is bed rest, usually for 4 to 6 weeks, and pain control and medical management for osteoporosis. But this conservative management is associated with multiple complications that include bad sores, chest infection due to there is pain on coughing efforts, and non-union that may lead to the prolonged pain. And very rarely, Kumul disease, I talk about this disease in the next slide, and Kumul bus fracture. And very rarely, this can lead to spinal cord injury. So this is a Kumul disease. Kumul disease is basically the osteonecrosis of the compressed vertebra. So here you can see that there is a cavity that forms due to the osteonecrosis. That cavity is usually on MRI, you can see it's a fluid-filled cavity. So this is the story of a lady who was treated conservatively for osteoporosis compression fracture for 2 months. And after 2 months, she started having sudden back pain and came to emergency. So on MRI, you can see the fluid-filled cavity on the vertebrae. And that time, because there were no neurological symptoms, she was treated conservatively. But she again came after 1 week with aggravated pain. And that time she had increased compression and some opening of the vertebrae, that is the bus fracture. So bus fracture is kind of fracture where fragments will spread out. So some fragments can go into the canal, some fragments will move towards the abdominal cavity. And she was offered surgical intervention, but she denied. So next week she came with neurological deficit. So that time she was operated surgically. And for osteoporotic compression fracture, we offer 2 kinds of treatment that are the minimally invasive surgical intervention. One is vertebroplasty, another is the kyphoplasty. And this slide shows difference between the vertebroplasty and the kyphoplasty. So what happens in vertebroplasty? You introduce cannula into the vertebra and put cement inside the vertebra, so that there is no further compression and pain is relieved. In addition to this, in kyphoplasty, you put some balloon and create a cavity and partially reduce the compression. So ideally, the kyphoplasty was introduced as a deformity correction procedure, but later on, because it's not possible in every fracture to lift the vertebra and reduce the deformity. So now many people, they also consider this as a pain control procedure. So these are the steps of kyphoplasty. You introduce cannula into the vertebra, and then you introduce the balloon, and then you inflate balloon with the radio opaque dye. So here you can see this black thing is the radio opaque dye and the balloon, and then the cavity which is created is filled with the cement, bone cement. And you can see this minimally invasive procedure which can be done with incision around 5 mm to 7 or 8 mm. So kyphoplasty, as compared to the vertebroplasty, is a low pressure procedure. So when we do vertebroplasty, we have to introduce cement when it is very thin, and to put that cement into the vertebra, we have to put lots of pressure. So this has a disadvantage. So if you put lots of pressure in a liquid cement, there are chances that it can go into the abdominal cavity, and worse, it can go into the spinal canal. So that's why I prefer kyphoplasty, because I can create a cavity that makes a low pressure system, and also I can put some thick cement easily into that cavity, and that reduces the chance of cement moving into the canal or abdomen. And this differentiates this procedure from the vertebroplasty. So there are few cases of the vertebroplasty. This lady we treated is 82-year female. She had a history of slip and fall, and she presented with the back pain. Initially, in the emergency room, we could see there is some compression, but there was resident told me that there is no tenderness, so we sent her home with conservative intention and called her back to our clinic after 1 week. And here you can see the increase in the compression. That time we sent her for the MRI, and on STI sequence as I discussed before, you can see high signal intensity. So we advised her kyphoplasty and did a kyphoplasty at D12 level, and that patient was sitting and walking pain-free in the evening of the surgery. And this is a case of another patient who we treated conservatively for 2 months. Then after 2 months he came with very severe back pain, and he would not allow anyone to touch her, and he will not move around, just lying down on the bed. He had no neurological deficit though. So we did MRI and we found there were multiple levels of compression fracture. Now this patient was very frail, elderly, and with multiple comorbidities. It was not possible to cement every level, so we decided on clinical basis that we will put cement into only one vertebra, which was clinically most painful. So we did kyphoplasty at D12, and the patient was sitting pain-free on bed in the evening, and next day he was mobilized and discharged from our hospital on teriparatide injection. So you can see the post-op X-ray of this patient. Even though there are multiple fractures at other levels, but they were not hurting her in post-op period. So this is another case, a 69-year-old lady who came to us with L1 compression fracture. We advised kyphoplasty, but patient and her family denied procedure at that time. We managed her conservatively for 3 months, but she was not relieved of pain. Although 3 months she denied to sit or walk. She was sleeping all the day on the bed. So this was the fracture you can see on X-ray. So finally, because of pain, family and patient, they decided to go for the kyphoplasty procedure. Now there came the big question whether we should do kyphoplasty at 3 months after injury. In theory, in standard textbook teaching is no. But because she had lots of pain and still she had tenderness at that particular level, so we went ahead for kyphoplasty and we decided to go for kyphoplasty. But that patient had diabetes, hypertension, aortic stenosis with severe AR. Now cardiologist denied clearance for the general anesthesia, and they told let her go first valve replacement and then you can do the surgery. That was not possible. So we decided to do kyphoplasty under local anesthesia. And these are the images of her procedure. And she was sitting on the bed 3 hours after injury without any support, and next day she was walking and discharged from the without any pain. There is enough literature available in support of balloon kyphoplasty, so I don't want to go into detail for this. And I am very thankful to Physician Forum of India, our marketing team from Fortis Escorts and marketing team from for Gabapin Anti and Gabapin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravinder. We have questions at the end of the third lecture. Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Sir, I have one more question. I think I should present after you. That is one.
No, but we have limited time.
So you want to submit right now?
No, but you can take only 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, not.
Only 2 minutes. But you have to finish within 2 minutes.
So I just wanted to introduce endoscopy because whenever I meet physician, most of the time I am asked questions regarding the endoscopy. I think many people are getting interested on this procedure. So for this slides, I am very thankful to Professor Yun Sung Kim. He was my mentor at South Korea, and he has given me permission to use these slides as far as I acknowledge his name. So this is a small overview of endoscopic spine surgery. And what is endoscopic spine surgery? So technically endoscopic spine surgery is a minimally invasive procedure where you can put all the instruments through very small channels with different kind of instrument channels. So AO Spine has recently classified endoscopy into full endoscopy spine surgery and endoscopic assisted spine surgery. So endoscopic assisted spine surgery is the microendoscopic procedure, all the minimally invasive spine surgeries, and also biportal endoscopy. Standard full endoscopy surgery is the uniportal endoscopy that I will discuss later on. So first of all, why do we need endoscopic spine surgery? And this is one example from Japan that can explain why do we need endoscopic spine surgery. So here you can see the prevalence of lumbar disorder in the community and growing age of the patient. So with the increased medical facilities, now people are growing older and older, and old population is increasing, and that puts a lot of weight on the spine surgeon to deal with their spine conditions. Especially elderly people, they have canal stenosis and all those debilitating diseases. So endoscopy provides a minimally invasive solution to spine surgery with a small incision, less blood loss and fast recovery. And what is the rationale behind the endoscopic spine surgery? Why actually what does it differentiate from the open surgery? So in old patients, all the spine condition, especially stenosis, is associated with the instability. If central stenosis is there, it is associated with the segmental instability. Foraminal stenosis is associated with lateral wedging instability. And this instability is due to there is degeneration in the facet joints, and facet joints are already, they have become weak. So we need to do procedures which do not weaken those facets further. So if we do open spine surgery, usually we have to sacrifice one or two facets. That means we have to go for the fusion procedure. But in endoscopic spine surgery, if you go transforaminal, usually we have to do less than 50% of the bony violation around the disc, and in interlaminar it is less than 20%. So that is the rationale behind the spine endoscopy, that we do very minimum bone damage to the spine. And with this we can achieve enough decompression, and we can preserve the facet joints. So what are the types of endoscopic spine surgery? I have already discussed this AO classification. I don't want to go into detail of this. So one is the microendoscopic spine surgery. So microendoscopic spine surgery is performed through tube-like retractors, as you can see in this image, that is Matrix 2 system from the Medtronic. So through tube with the specialized instrument and with the help of microscope, you can do all the procedures, and you can dock those tubes on the top of the vertebra. So in this image, you can see the disc is being removed from the spine with the help of that tube. And different companies have made different kind of.
Dr. Ravinder, you have to be really very fast.
Yes. Just go 2 more slides. And under the unilateral biportal endoscopy, that is kind of arthroscopy of the spine. So we make two portal on the same side of the spine, and from one portal we can introduce the arthroscope, another portal we can introduce the instrument. So in this X-ray you can see clearly, this is the spinous process, this is one side of the spine, and you can see from one portal we have introduced arthroscope and the other portal instrument. And finally comes the full endoscopy, that is a uniportal endoscopy spine surgery, because I want to go a little detail on this inside out and outside in thing, because many times people have told me that they have seen most of the endoscopic procedure are failed. So there is one reason behind that, because most of the people are doing inside out technique. So this is the endoscope. This is one single port. You can you have camera, you have light source, and this is the working channel. And through the same port, you have irrigation system. So you can introduce this thin port either through the foramen of the vertebra or between the two lamina of the vertebra. That is called interlaminar approach. And if it goes through the foramen, it is called transforaminal approach. So this is the difference between the inside out. So what you do in inside out technique, you go directly inside the disc and then remove disc, but in that process you are very prone to leave the most critical part of the disc, because you cannot see this part of the disc. It's very difficult to visualize this one. So that's why later on people introduce outside technique, where you can go first to the bony structure, and from there you dissect out all the soft tissue and all the bone from outside in. So there are very less chances of leaving any critical bone disc fragment inside there. So we are planning to start this outside in technique in our hospital, and we look for your support so that we can do things
Thank you,
together.
Dr. Ravinder. Next time we will request Sports Marketing to keep a separate talk of yours. I think we can fix next date today. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kalra.
Friends, Dr. Mohammad Shahbaz Siddiqui has already introduced himself to you, and I will request Dr. M.L. Kalra sir to introduce him again to all of you. When we started the discussion today, Dr. Ravinder was the first one to say, no, start with Dr. Siddiqui, and we start with Dr. K.K. Mishra. And when it was the turn for Dr. Ravinder, he again said, no, start with Dr. Siddiqui. So something rang in my head. What is it about Dr. Siddiqui that everyone wants to promote him? Dr. K.K. Mishra wants to say, no, start with Dr. Siddiqui. And Dr. Ravinder is saying, start with Dr. Siddiqui. So let us finally start with Dr. Siddiqui.
Very good.
And I request Dr. M.L. Kalra sir to introduce him formally to the audience. This august gathering of educated physicians and super specialists from South Delhi to this wonderful gathering. Dr. M.L. Kalra sir.
Before I introduce my friend, Dr. Shahbaz Siddiqui, I would say a few words about Dr. Chauhan. वो मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूँ सर कि उन्होंने सबने कहा कि पहले इनसे शुरू करो, क्योंकि इन्होंने पैथोफिजियोलॉजी सुनानी है, आपने नहीं माना। आप उस बात पर रहे कि हम जहाँ से खड़े हो जाते हैं वहीं से लाइन शुरू हो जाती है। एनीवे सर, हम यहाँ सारे पढ़े लिखे हैं, आप आगे सुनाओ पीछे सुनाओ। पैथोफिजियोलॉजी although we know it's nothing new for us, but it will be even now. वो कहते हैं ना कि पहला डब्बा आखिरी में लगा लो तो भी पहला डब्बा ही रहता है। So you are first for us. Dr. Siddiqui, you did your DNB from Gangaram and fellowship in complex trauma. I will not take more time in introducing. Your experience is all type of complex trauma. So let us make it simple.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Good evening, dear friends and respected seniors. My topic today is pathophysiology and medical management of osteoporosis. As you know, everybody knows the clinical definition of osteoporosis is it's a clinical disorder characterized by abnormally low bone mass and microarchitectural deterioration of bone tissue, leading to enhanced bone fragility and consequently resulting in fractures. This is the WHO guidelines, which is based on the DEXA scan, the scan the sir was talking about. From the scan, there are two scores which are determined, that's the T and the Z score. So we look at the T score first, and on the basis of that, this is the classification. If it is less than -1, it is considered normal. If it is between -1 to -2.5, it's considered osteopenia, and whenever the DEXA T score goes below -2.5, it's diagnosed as osteoporosis. Epidemiology has already been told, I'll just repeat it once again. 40% of women and 14% of men over the age of 50 years will suffer an osteoporotic fracture in their remaining lifetime. The prevalence of osteoporosis in postmenopausal women in India is observed to be around 30%, which is an alarming figure because these fractures are really having too much of mortality and mobility. The pathophysiology is very basically, I've shortened it. There are two main factors, which is first is the failure to attain the peak bone mass, and the second is excessive bone resorption or the decreased bone formation during remodeling. So concept of peak bone mass is very simple. It is attainment of peak bone mass is of prime importance in preventing the osteoporosis, and the most important factor is 80% is genetic, the second is hormonal, and third is environmental factors such as nutrition, exercise, smoking, alcohol. So this is a small slide showing the peak bone mass. The peak bone mass is achieved during the adulthood between 20 to 30 years of age. That peak bone mass which is attained decreases gradually over the years. So achieving the peak bone mass is the cornerstone to preventing the osteoporosis. The second pathophysiology is the bone remodeling process. Our bone is in a constant state of formation and resorption. The osteoclast and osteoblastic activity are happening at the same time in the body. So any disbalance between this bone remodeling process will result in consequently result in osteoporosis. This is just a depiction of the bone remodeling cycle where osteoclasts and osteoblasts are acting at the same time on the bone. Risk factors for the osteoporosis can be divided into two. The most common non-modifiable factors: advanced age, early menopause, primary androgen, estrogen deficiencies. The modified risk factors are most commonly important are smoking, alcohol, steroid intake, inadequate dietary intake of calcium and vitamin D. So these are some general risk factors. This is a simple description of loss of height due to osteoporotic vertebral fractures which happens in old age. Up to 1.5 inch or 2 inches of height could be lost due to multiple osteoporotic fractures, which is significantly noticed by patients. These pictures demonstrate the common fragility or osteoporotic fractures, which are, the first one is osteoporotic compression fracture of the spine, the second one is distal radius fracture, the third one is intertrochanteric fracture. These three are very common osteoporotic fractures. So the most important risk factor for an osteoporotic fracture is a previous osteoporotic fracture. In this X-ray, we can see a right-sided hip fracture 1 year before, which was fixed with an implant, and the next year again he developed a left hip fracture. So when to measure the BMD in postmenopausal women? So all women aged 65 years or elder should be screened for osteoporosis. Postmenopausal women, if less than 65 years of age, having one or more of the risk factors mentioned before, should be screened, or if they have a history of fracture, they should be screened for osteoporosis. Diagnosis. For diagnosis, there is not much role of laboratory tests here. So we come to the main diagnostic thing, that is quantitative CT, which was previously started. It gives accurate measurement of fracture risk and measurement of bone loss. It gives 3D measurement of BMD. But this basic limitation is high radiation dose. That's why not done nowadays. Dual emission energy X-ray absorptiometry. This is the gold standard nowadays to test for osteoporosis. It's fast, it's reliable, it's accurate. It gives 2D measurement of BMD. BMD is reported in this as gram per square centimeter and then presented as T and Z score. So we should know what is T and Z score to know what is to determine analyze the results. Z score compares the patient's value to age and sex matched reference range. It is of less clinical value and is used in young adults only. The T score, which is what WHO recommends to diagnose it. What is T score? T score is a comparison of the patient's BMD to a young adult of the same age and age, sex and race. This is called a T score. Common sites for doing the DEXA scan are hip, spine, wrist. But sir already said the hip and spine are more important. wrist all normally gives us osteoporosis, but it's not very significant. This is the graph sir was talking about. This is the graph of a BMD test. You can see the green, cream and red color. So these are, green is normal. On the right side you can see -1 to 2. This -1 to 2 is the T-score. The T-score between -1 to 2 is normal. -1 to 2.5 comes in cream color, that is osteopenia. The square mark is the report, the value of the patient. On the x-axis there is the age of the patient. The red one down is if the BMD is below -2.5, it will be diagnosed as osteoporosis. Who should be considered for treatment of prevention of treatment? Any patient with T-score below -2.5, they should be started for treatment of osteoporosis. If a postmenopausal woman with T-score -2 with no risk factors or -1.5 with a few risk factors, they also can be started for osteoporosis treatment. Now treatment goals are, I am talking very briefly, the goal is to prevent any future fracture, relieve pain if they have fracture, and prevent long-term disability. So I'm going to be talking only about the medical management. So I have put in a very simple classification, in which the first part is anti-resorptive agents which prevent the osteoclastic activity. In that comes bisphosphonates, calcitonin, selective estrogen receptor modulators, and denosumab. And stimulation of the bone formation, there is teriparatide, and some agents which do both. They do osteoblastic activity promotion and reduce the osteoclastic activity. So for bisphosphonates, I will talk very briefly. These are currently considered first line of drug for prevention and treatment of osteoporosis. But since I've joined Fortis Escorts, I myself was doing this management only. Only after I met Dr. K.K. Mishra have I realized that I was doing the wrong treatment all my life. So my concept have changed after consulting sir and gaining knowledge from him.
Very good.
But this is the one, like most orthopedicians, we are also doing. These are potent inhibitors of bone resorption, and they inhibit bone resorption. How do I administer this? Because to reduce GI irritation and maximize the absorption, pills should be swallowed with 250 ml of water on empty stomach and remaining upright for 30 minutes and 60 minutes for ibadronate. So this is what we generally do if we give oral bisphosphonates. This is the classification. It's classified into non-nitrogen and nitrogen containing. We will not get into details in all this. There are, as sir has already said, the adverse effects of this atypical insufficiency fractures is the most crucial. After long-term therapy, studies have shown that there is high risk of atypical fractures, such as subtrochanteric fractures and atypical different types of fractures in very trivial trauma. And another very important adverse effect is the osteonecrosis of jaw, which is specifically related to bisphosphonate therapy long term. Around 5 to 7 years therapy, these adverse effects arise. This is an atypical subtrochanteric fracture which has happened due to trivial fall for a patient who has been using bisphosphonate for long term. The calcitonin are osteoclasts are the target cell for calcitonin. It also inhibits calcium resorption. It's less effective than bisphosphonates. There is slight increased risk of malignancy in calcitonin versus the placebo group. So that is why it is a second line treatment. It can be given intranasally on alternate nose. So it's a very simple drug, but always used as second line. Selective estrogen receptor modulator raloxifene, it is FDA approved for treatment of osteoporosis for postmenopausal women. It decreases the bone resorption like estrogen, but it does not have any risk factor of increased breast carcinoma. But the side effect is it increases vasomotor symptoms. So the dose is 60 mg per day. Denosumab, as sir was talking about, denosumab is a new drug and it's been widely used nowadays because of its less side effects than bisphosphonates. Denosumab is given 60 mg subcutaneously 6 monthly and it can be given for up to 10 years. Unlike the bisphosphonates, which has bad complications like insufficiency, fractures and osteonecrosis of jaw. Denosumab does not have those complications, and the effect of denosumab is similar to bisphosphonates. So right now currently denosumab is gaining confidence among our community, and we are starting to prescribe this. It's a newer drug. Teriparatide, as sir has already told everything about teriparatide, but I'll just tell you a few things. Intermittent dosage of teriparatide increases osteoblastic activity. So we give teriparatide 20 mcg subcutaneously daily for up to 2 years. We cannot combine teriparatide with bisphosphonate because the mechanism of action contradicts each other. So we have to stop bisphosphonate 1 year prior to starting teriparatide. Adverse effects of teriparatide are simple: tiredness, depression, sometimes palpitation, nausea, sometimes leg cramps develop. Osteosarcoma has not been reported in humans, but it has been shown in labs, so not much of a concern right now. So this is a PTH analog. It's a new drug, abaloparatide. So this is a PTH1 receptor analog. Its action is similar to the teriparatide, but it's a PTH receptor analog. So this is also a newer drug coming in nowadays. It has greater anabolic activity versus catabolic activity. Romosozumab is a neutralizing antibody to sclerostin. This is also a newer recent advance in the osteoporosis. Sclerostin is an inhibitor of the canonical WNT pathway and is critically important in regulating osteoblast activity and bone formation. So this is an anti-sclerostin antibody which prevents the binding of sclerostin to LPR5 WNT ligands, and after binding to this, it promotes osteoblastic activity. Strontium ranelate is the only drug which has both osteoblastic promotion activity and suppression of the osteoclastic activity. This drug promotes osteoblast replication and it stops osteoclastic action. But the problem with this drug is it has high incidence of cardiac events and thromboembolism. That's why not used as a first line drug. This is also a second line, although the effects are very good on bone, but still it is used as second line because of the drastic bad complications. This is a basic slide for comparison of vertebroplasty with kyphoplasty. Sir has already described, I think you have already come to know about all this. Thank you so much. Have a nice time.
लाइट जला देना भाई. हेलो कौन है? यहाँ से पूरा आ रहा है, नहीं आ रहा है. तो यहाँ गया आगे, मैं तो उधर बीच में फंस गया, इसमें तो वो कवर नहीं हो पाया.
बत्तियाँ जला दो.
लिया उठा के ना क्या आगे पीछे ये दिल से.
Dear friends, we had very wonderful 3 talks. Although they were a bit more exhaustive for us because they were 3 in a row, and the pathophysiology friend also talked about pharmacology, things like that. So, we were so impressed. I am talking on behalf of all my friends with the English of Dr. our new friend, Dr. Kaushal Kant Mishra. And his presentation was without slides, better than slides, and I wish that carry home messages are take home messages are carried very well. But we were shaken at times. We took some of your information with pinch of salt, although salt is also not good for osteoporosis. Sir, ज़्यादा salt खाने से भी osteoporosis हो सकता है क्योंकि ये कैल्शियम की reabsorption and absorption पे इफेक्ट करता है. सर ये जो आपने बताया कि bisphosphonates, till now everybody present in this hall will be remembering and recapitulating. This is first line of treatment. So I don't know how much should we take home that we should not use it. Are there any specific cases where we can use it?
The only specific case to use bisphosphonate is metastatic cancer, in which you can use bisphosphonate as first line of treatment. Otherwise, truly speaking, no other indication for this. The second
Do you
indication.
agree with this? No, very frank. It should be very frank. Because you spoke on this topic. Do you agree with this?
I'll be I'll be telling you what I've been doing all these years.
Yes.
Although I don't have experience of sir, I have been prescribing bisphosphonate therapy because of the cost effectiveness of the patient. If I prescribe any patient for a teriparatide injection, suddenly they are shocked to hear subcutaneous injections for 1 year, 2 years. So patient compliance becomes difficult and they start rising from the chair, and then I have to come down to something of an acceptable offer to them, and that's why bisphosphonate has been my treatment of choice until now. Until I joined Fortis and Mets and know about all this. Although I have read all the complications in the book, but since I don't have that much of experience of seeing so many complications.
Sir, what should be take home message for our audience? It should be used or not used?
Sir, take home message should be the correct message, and bisphosphonate should not be the first line of treatment. And the first line of treatment is between calcium and vitamin D and calcium is the basic line of treatment. Second, first जो उन्होंने बनाया था ना, that is actually reverse. Okay, bisphosphonate should be the last choice. And after the continuous use of teriparatide for around 1.5 years, then only you should use denosumab. I am telling the practical thing which I do and which I will do with my family, and that is what I am recommending.
पेशेंट इंजेक्शन को मना कर देता तो देंगे नहीं है उसको बिस्फोसफेट को।
सर,
हमने कैल्शियम दे दिया, विटामिन डी दे दिया। तो पेशेंट मरीज ने कहा मैं इंजेक्शन तो नहीं लूंगा, तो उसको हम देंगे नहीं देंगे।
उस कंडीशन में अगर ऐसी सिचुएशन है तो denosumab is a better choice than bisphosphonate.
वो भी इंजेक्टेबल ही है ना, वो
6 महीने में एक बार है सर।
Cost is 15,000 around.
सर, अगर पेशेंट की नहीं, we all know what is the cost and what is the real cost. So it's totally depending on us.
सर देखिए, जो डेनोसुमेब है वो भी एंटी डिसऑप्टिव है और बिस्फोसफेट एंटी डिसऑप्टिव है, तो मतलब वो ओरल है, वो इंजेक्टेबल है।
सर, उसमें फर्क ये है कि डेनोसुमेब में मैं अभी इसमें फिंगर्स क्रॉस करके बैठा हूँ क्योंकि डेनोसुमेब अभी 2 साल पहले आई है, बिस्फोसफोनेट 20 साल से चल रही है, तो उसके कॉम्प्लिकेशन हम पढ़ चुके हैं, देख चुके हैं। हो सकता है आगे चल के डेनोसुमेब का भी यही हाल हो, लेकिन टिल द टुडे according to available literature, if you choose me the second choice after the teriparatide, I will say denosumab.
सर देखिए, जो एंटी डिसऑप्टिव एंड बोन फॉर्मेशन एक्टिविटी जो है वो बराबर चल रही है। आपने डिसऑप्टिव बंद कर दी तो बोन फॉर्मेशन तो होगा ना।
ये मैं एक चीज बता दूं, पैथोफिजियोलॉजी में उस पर नहीं जाना चाहता था। ऑस्टियोपोरोसिस होती कैसे है? बॉडी में एनाबॉलिज्म एंड कैटाबॉलिज्म दोनों साथ साथ चलती है। जब हमारी एज 32 पहुंचती है, 32 टू लेके 45 तक हमारा एनाबॉलिज्म एंड कैटाबॉलिज्म रन्स इक्वली, ओके, एंड आफ्टर द 45 और 50 इयर्स कैटाबॉलिज्म टेक ओवर एंड एनाबॉलिज्म कम्स डाउन। तो उस समय ऑस्टियोब्लास्टिक एक्टिविटी एक्चुअली नहीं चल रही होती है, वो केवल एंड ऑफ बोन्स पे चल रही होती है जहां पे वेस्कुलरिटी होती है।
डॉक्टर मिश्रा सर, ये जो आप बता रहे हो एनाबॉलिज्म कैटाबॉलिज्म 32 टू 45, ये सर आप फीमेल्स के लिए बोल रहे हैं, सिर्फ मेल्स के लिए या दोनों सेक्सेस के लिए?
ये ऑलमोस्ट सर देखिए, मैंने जानबूझ के 45 तक ले लिया क्योंकि जो बुक्स में लिखा हुआ है कि बोन की कैटाबॉलिज्म एनाबॉलिज्म 32 टू 42 तक स्टेबल इन द बोथ, बट फीमेल्स में 45 पे हार्मोन्स का ज्यादा इफेक्ट आता है। एक्चुअली एनाबॉलिज्म एंड कैटाबॉलिज्म एक्टिविटी इज स्टेबल फ्रॉम 32 टू 42 ओनली। आफ्टर 42 आवर बोन्स स्टार्ट्स एजिंग gradually,
even in males.
Even in males.
Okay, that is, and is it in any way related to decrease in the levels of testosterone in males?
I don't know.
Definitely, sir. It is.
I am honest, I don't know.
I think Dr. Chauhan, this is very interesting topic and we have not come to conclusion. So on this topic, we should have...
I would like to involve as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Dr. Balla has a question.
Yeah, but we should have another CME on this topic.
We will have.
Which one is the best?
Deslorubab plus teriparatide, can they be combined together for a better results?
Sir, it should not be combined in between. After finishing your teriparatide treatment, then you should give denosumab, so that because when you start, it is osteoporosis at this level. When you start giving teriparatide, it will come up in yellow zone or up to the green zone. Then you will give denosumab, then it will make stable. Otherwise, if you are giving at the red zone, then it will make stable at the red zone, and which is good for the pain, which is good symptomatically, but the bone strength is very weak. Trivial trauma makes fracture. So the patient becomes symptomatically okay with your bisphosphonate treatment because the bone becomes brittle. But actually, little trauma will cause the fracture. That is the main problem.
Dr. Kaushal sir, here, since they are acting at different levels, why are they not synergistic and why can't they be used in the case of vertebral fracture? Suppose denosumab and teriparatide, if they are given together, what harm will they do to a patient of fracture?
Okay. Sir, denosumab या bisphosphonate. Denosumab is advanced version of bisphosphonate. This falls in the same group. How they act? They stop the osteoclastic activity. And at the age after 50 years, usually osteoclastic activity is nil until unless there is a fracture or there is inflammation or there is irritation of bone due to any pathology. So osteoclastic activity is not there after the age of 50 years, which I am extending actually. Correct? So if osteoclastic activity is blocked, then there is no remodeling at all. So the bone quality will remain the same. But what the teriparatide will give? Teriparatide will give pulse therapy. It has been seen in the labs and everywhere. Teriparatide is a natural way of strengthening the bone. And that is how this osteoporosis comes from red zone to yellow zone with the long-term treatment. Minimum duration is 1 year. Minimum duration is 1 year. And ideally it should be 1.5 years. It can be given up to 2.5 years. It's us to convince the patient. If the patient is not agreeing it, if everybody stop using bisphosphonate, probably the patient will follow. It's us who has to make patient comfortable, confident. In my opinion, it's mismanagement, truly speaking.
Dr. Hemant.
Dr. Saluja has a question.
Sir, at the outset, I would like to say that whatever I am going to ask is not intended to undermine whatever you have said.
No, sir. No, sir.
So please forgive me if I sound offensive. Sir, in an era of evidence-based medicine, your guidelines or whatever you have shared with us, does it carry any scientific backing or is it just your experience? Because medicine today is more of science as much as it is an art.
Okay. Sir, I will ask everybody, go on Google, search for FDA warning for bisphosphonates. You will find there is a warning issued in USA on bisphosphonate in 2014.
The point taken about bisphosphonates, point is taken. So the question is, sir, bisphosphonates are to be, as Dr. Sharma said, they act synergistically with calcium and vitamin D. So why can't they be used together?
I am telling the science. Bisphosphonate blocks.
Dr. Saluja, we have Dr. R.K. Wadhwa, who is heading the Department of Physical Medical Rehabilitation. He has been prescribing bisphosphonates for donkey years. I would like a comment from him.
There is a saying, the more we know, the more we come to know how little we know. So this is a very interesting topic. Most of us or all of us have been using bisphosphonates as first-line treatment, but Dr. Kaushal has a different experience, and I think it needs more debate. And
One more CME on this.
Okay,
actually,
actually,
respect is experience, and I think we can carry forward and debate it more in different forums.
I think it's a very apt question by Dr. Saluja. It's a very apt question by Dr. Saluja. I think Dr. Kushal Mishra shared his experience. I would say his own experience, whether it was backed by scientific evidence, Google, etc., we do not know. And therefore, we need another CME exclusively by Dr. Kushal Mishra, based on slides where he presents evidence scientifically backed.
Yes.
Scientifically backed. Sir, Dr. Anand then told me I will ask a question today, and therefore I allow you to ask a question.
Role of concentrated platelets at the fracture site. Role of
Platelet-rich plasma. Role of PRP.
Role of PRP in fracture.
Fracture site.
Evidence-based medicine says there is no role.
There is no role.
No role.
Okay.
Any PRP, any injection at any fracture site has no role on fracture healing.
Right, sir. You are given your verdict. Dr. H.L. Kantur has a question.
what is the pathophysiology behind the osteoporosis of the mandible and fracture of the intertrochanteric fracture of the femur?
Osteonecrosis of jaw. I have not gone in the detail of why it is happening, but yes, for subtrochanteric atypical fracture, which is the commonest fracture after the bisphosphonate, long-term treatment beyond 2 years is the subtrochanteric area is the area where there is no attachment of any muscles. Correct? Proximally there is gluteal muscle. Below that, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius. That area which is bare without any muscle, it means it has got least blood supply. It means the chances of anabolism is least at that point. And that is why it is the most affected area by bisphosphonate, because osteoclastic activity is zero at that level. And that is why there is a fracture which is atypical without any injury. It's just twisting injury which causes this fracture.
Dr. Jitendra actually was caught in a traffic. I requested him to come anyway. It's taken him 2 hours to reach from Gapa Seda to this place. He deserves a question.
Yes, sir.
Sir, my question is to Dr. Ravinder Singh. This is about the vertebral fractures. So we do come across lots of vertebral fractures in our clinical practice. The practice used to be giving them brace and bed rest for a long time, and the fracture would heal. That used to be practice. I know now you come up with vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty and other things. Then we were also treating with them with screws, particularly pedicle screws, etc. So what is the method, what is the preferred treatment? Is it kyphoplasty, screws? And another thing, is this treatment of kyphoplasty for right from cervical spine down to the you can use for any kind of vertical fracture?
Okay, so I don't say there is no conservative treatment for the vertical fracture. You can go for conservative treatment, but has its flaws. Like patient will be lying on the bed rest for 4 to 6 weeks, and then he has prolonged pain, and sometimes patient have weak off efforts due to the pain that can lead to the chest infection, and also I discussed very rare complication. That is the most dreadful complication. That is the Kamal's osteonecrosis and the Kamal's first fracture. So when that happens, that will lead to the most of the time to the some kind of spinal cord injury. So this is one thing. Second thing is we can give patelloplasty or vertebroplasty in the dorsal level or in the lumbar level. It's very difficult to do both procedures in the cervical spine. It's very difficult because pedigles are very thin, and also it's like even if you do screw in the cervical spine, you put them into the lateral mass. Very few pedigles are thick enough to put the skin. And as far as the screw is concerned, it's a too big treatment for osteoporotic compression fracture. because there is bone is already weak, and if you have too many screws, so we are already making the other vertebra as well. So it's kind of compression fracture. So main treatment.
Maybe the O-arm or a computer navigation would be better if you are dealing with the screws in that case.
No, O-arm cannot be for this. But kyphoplasty you need O-arm.
No, not for the kyphoplasty, but if you are using screws, maybe.
No, we can use multiple ways. O-arm is something very new. It will help me inside a little O-arm that will be very helpful.
We are not using in our side for this the facility of O-arm.
No, O-arm can be used for screws, but why do you use O-arm just for 2 or 3 screws? We need O-arm strictly when we big deformity guys.
Friends, so we give it to Dr. Tulsi sir. He will ask some very pertinent, relevant questions, and he will limit himself to the timing. I'll give you 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Chauhan. So those were some wonderful talks by the 3 speakers. So, Dr. Mishra, currently there is no treatment to reverse osteoporosis. See, early intervention can prevent osteoporosis, and in established osteoporosis, medical intervention can halt its progression. Do you have any drug which can reverse osteoporosis, Dr. Mishra?
Reversing osteoporosis, that is the question. गिले नादा तुझे हुआ क्या है?
नहीं, मैं बता रहा हूँ क्योंकि osteoporosis is not a disease of bone only. It is a disease of bone, soft tissue, and everything. That is why I am thinking about the question. Because truly osteoporosis cannot be reversed. Only the bony part of osteoporosis can be corrected with the PTH.
Can be corrected.
Can be corrected.
I don't think it can be corrected, so that means you are curing osteoporosis. You can just halt its progression. It cannot be corrected, sir. You can halt its progression. You can please correct me if I am wrong.
You can slow its progression, that is what you mean, doctor?
You can halt its progression or slow its progression. You cannot
reverse it.
You cannot reverse osteoporosis.
As per evidence on bone density, we are able to bring the osteoporosis level to osteopenia, means from red zone we can bring it to the yellow zone and green zone, and I have done it with the teriparatide, and so osteoporosis can be corrected. But you asking reversing, it's impossible.
Cannot be cured.
You cannot bring back the age.
Let's proceed further. Dr. Mishra, you have raised a very controversial point regarding bisphosphonates. They have been the gold standard of treatment till today. See, and your statement saying that this causes increased risk of fractured femur, very controversial, because if you give bisphosphonates for more than 5 to 7 years, then only this side effect is seen, not before that. Please correct me.
Sir, it has been written in atypical fracture that any treatment beyond 2 years may cause atypical fractures. Any treatment continuous.
That if you give even denosumab and stop denosumab after 2 years, it will cause 70% increased fractures in the spine.
Spine is cancellous bone where the vascularity all around surrounded by the tight muscle, and at the high level, at the risk of atypical fracture is more around the hip and at the distal end of ulna. So it is the site where the blood supply is less in vertebra. Atypical fracture has not been seen till date, but I don't know about future.
Atypical fractures not been seen where?
In cancellous bone.
In cancellous bone. Okay, so the 4 top sites of fractures would be what? Wrist, forearm, spine, and the hip. And please correct me, sir. If you stop denosumab after, you can't give it for more than about 2 to 3 years, and then the risk of spinal fractures increases by 70%. How true is that? I read this, that's what I'm saying.
I agree, sir. That is why I said
first you bring your osteoporosis level to the normal level, then you give denosumab. If you are giving denosumab at the level of osteoporosis, you are telling the report in which we are starting denosumab immediately when we find the osteoporosis at the -2.5 level or below. Then if you start denosumab, yes, after stopping 2 years it will cause fracture. But if you bring it back to the less than 2.5, it means you have corrected the osteoporosis, and then if you are giving the denosumab, probably it will make as normal as possible.
Okay, so what I believe is that if you give any anti-disruptive medicines, give a drug holiday. Give it for 2 years, 3 years, give a drug holiday, on and off. This is what seems to be doing it. Okay, Dr. Chauhan says 2 minutes more or 2 questions more. Anyway, let me proceed further. So, Dr. Bhalla raised a very pertinent question and talked about denosumab along with teriparatide for refractory osteoporosis. You know, this is an excellent combination, though it's not been US FDA approved. But if you give these 2 drugs, this is an excellent combination for refractory osteoporosis. Tell us about this. Combining denosumab along with teriparatide.
Sir,
I again said it's not US FDA approved, but seems to work very well in refractory osteoporosis.
Sir, refractory osteoporosis is a very rare phenomenon, first of all.
It is.
Okay. And truly speaking, I don't have any experience about the refractory osteoporosis, so I can't comment as expert.
Okay, my last question to any of you, or to 3 of you, would be regarding calcium supplements. What do you prefer? Do you prefer calcium carbonate or do you prefer calcium citrate?
I prefer calcium citrate.
Citrate?
Calcium citrate malate, but I think everybody has got its own choice, but yes, theoretically calcium citrate malate has got better
calcium carbonate, let me differ with you. Calcium carbonate seems to be a better choice as it contains highest amount of elemental calcium, about 40% by weight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, we have a question from Dr. Gurmeet Bansal ma'am.
I wanted to know which terms do you prescribe for a post-menopausal osteoporotic hearing? And secondly, a lady who has undergone AVN, both sides, secondary to long-term steroids in the COVID era, can she attempt conception?
Ma'am, AVN has nothing to do with conception, so the conception has no problem with AVN.
Does the necrosis increase?
No, ma'am, I don't think there is any role of AVN and any relation between AVN and pregnancy.
If she continues the pregnancy, what happens?
Nothing. I think both will grow in different paths. They have got different pathophysiology. AVN is... I am saying, no ma'am, pregnancy is a natural phenomenon. AVN is a pathological phenomenon, and in AVN the blood supply of head is gone, so it is the local pathology. It's not the systemic pathology.
So there's no effect?
There is no effect of pregnancy, no effect of hormone, no effect of till date. There is no effect of any treatment on AVN.
So she can smoothly undergo a pregnancy?
Yes.
Okay. And about the sums?
Ma'am, for post-menopausal women, what I don't have any experience about some, so I can't comment, but what I give, and I am happy with that I use isoflavine, means Sialcap Iso or Bio D3 Fem, along with B-Long, the old therapy, and vitamin D. This is my choice of medicine for all post-menopausal women.
Sir, can I just ask one question? And add to what Dr. Gurmeet Bansal ma'am asked? Do you add iron to what you just described?
Usually, no. But if the female is having bleeding or anemia, then yes, I can do it. But this is not my preferred.
Right. Doctor.